that's it from me. I'm going to hand over to Mel straight away. And as we pointed out earlier, we will be recording a session and it will be available on your Chaz Academy. I think Maria said in approximately 2 weeks' time for those that are struggling with a bit of load shedding today. But for those of you that have made a plan and have joined us, thank you for joining us. And over to Mel.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you to all the participants for making the time to join us for our second session of a 3-session preparation course. For those of you who attended our session 1, I think it was interesting. We got very good feedback on the session after it was done. By now, I think the PowerPoint for session 1 has been submitted and has been shared. And I've already sent this PowerPoint for session 2 to Vanessa, so I'm sure that she'll circulate it accordingly. If there are any questions regarding today's session or last week's session or the session 1 or the next session, please pop the questions through to Vanessa and Richard, and we'll make sure that we get the answers to you. So, but before I start with the content of today's very exciting and practical presentation, I just wish to thank Barry and the whole of the Chaz Everett Training Academy for the most magnificent flowers which was delivered to me after session 1. And I think it is always so very important to show one's gratitude. There's nothing nicer for any of us ladies in the industry and generally than receiving a beautiful, very colorful bunch of flowers. So I just wanted to express my gratitude for that gesture. And I definitely don't do training. Jana.
Let it be noted that Barry has never ever, in the like 10 or 12 years that I've known him, he's never ever bought me anything, not even flowers.
Richard, let it be noted further that I definitely don't do the training just for the flowers, you know. But yeah, I just wanted to say thank you very much. It was beautiful and it was a very big surprise. And it's really, really appreciated from my side. So today, session 2, as I said at the beginning, we are doing our POPI preparation for the Chaz Training Academy over 3 sessions. Session 1, done and dusted on the 20th of August. And from this slide, you're able to remind yourselves of the date for session 3, which is on the 17th of September, again at 2 o'clock. If we need another session following session 3, we can always arrange another one, maybe a question and answer session. I'm quite sure that after session 3, your organization will start working slowly but surely on all the changes that are required. A reminder to all the agents and everybody really participating in the Zoom training today, the cutoff date for compliance in terms of POPI, which is the POPI Act, is July 2021. So I have a suspicion that we'll give the training a bit of a break for the next few months, but that will probably pick up some refresher training or more specific training on your organization's policy in detail earlier next year, again in preparation of it all going live in July 2021. And I thought that I'd just run through the objectives which I started session 1 with of the 3-session course, and just give a bit of a summary of what we've done in session 1 and what we will be covering today in session 2. So we've already gone through the wider POPI Act framework and looked at the obligations in respect of real estate activities and the due dates. The due dates, a reminder, keep reminding you guys, is July 2021. We also went through the POPI Act's definition of personal information. What is personal information? We're talking about privacy of personal information and clients' rights in terms of personal information. We went through the definition of what is included in that definition quite broadly in our first session. You know, since the first session, I've received many queries regarding property details, statistics on property sales in a specific area that you possibly get from CMA or Lightstone. And if you go back to the definition and you test your property description or your property stats or property sales details that you get from CMA against the definition, you're able then to determine yourself whether property description or property sales details falls within the definition of personal information. It's valuable for yourselves to remind, to remind yourself of what is actually meant with personal information. But we did go through that in detail last time. We also analysed the sources from where estate agents or real estate agencies collect clients' information at the moment, and how that information was collected. And you'll remember from session 1, there's a wide variety of places that you and I both collect information from, and where we get information from. So the quick recap, I mean, our information sheets, we get details from the deeds office, we get details from CMA, surveyor's office, council. We get details from Facebook, social media. So there were lots of sources of the information that we collect and how we were collecting the information. We went through all of that in session 1. And we also determined what it was that you as real estate practitioners were doing with clients' information. So once you've collected the information sheet attached to a mandate, what do you actually do with the seller's information that the seller completed? You load it into a system, maybe you share it with Property 24. We went through that in detail in session 1. And then we also discussed in quite a lot of detail why we were collecting information, which is quite an important aspect of POPI. We can't just collect information because an attorney tells you that you need to collect information, or you think that you need to collect the information. You need to collect the information only necessary to the purpose of that collection. We went through this in session 1, and we established the various reasons why real estate practitioners were collecting information. FICA, you obliged in terms of the FICA Act, Deeds Registry Act, you must check marital status, etc. There are various other pieces of legislation which oblige you as a real estate practitioner to collect information. So today, we'll be going through just what will appear in your privacy policy, and what the type of new practices will be which will emanate from the future privacy policy. I'm not entirely sure if your organization has already started developing its privacy policy. The chances are quite good. STBB has started writing our own privacy policy because as with yourselves, we collect immense amounts of data and clients' personal information on a daily basis. And we also, have to start working on our own policies. So I'm just going to share some thoughts on what the privacy policies generally should contain, so that it's not such a big surprise early next year when your policy has passed and you get a copy and you're not entirely sure what things mean. And then we are going to look at what we think your standard documentation should look like, and the changes that we think you should start making to the standard documentation, like emails. Is there anything regarding POPI and privacy and clients' information you should be embedding in your email signature? Is there anything that you need to put in your mandates? Is there anything you need to reference in respect of privacy or clients' information, or where do you get the consent? Do you need to build in new clauses? So I'm going to run through that with you today and just give you some tangible examples. And then I will hopefully have time to go through the direct marketing requirements. I gave everybody who attended session 1 some homework to do at the end of session 1. The conundrum which exists in respect of the restriction imposed on you and on me in using clients' information for direct marketing purposes without getting their consent leaves us in a catch-22 situation. So we can't get their consent because we're not allowed to contact them without their consent. So it's a bit of a conundrum that we have in the real estate industry especially. And I mean, it doesn't only affect the real estate industry, it also affects MTN, Sanlam, insurance, the larger corporations who canvas, who phone us. They get our details from somewhere and they phone us without us ever having done business with them. There is a specific restriction on using clients' information despite the source of the information. We're not allowed to use the information to canvas and cold call without obtaining the client's consent. So I'm going to give you a solution to that problem. And then in session 3, we'll talk a little bit more about safety and security and the way of the world, which is electronic, and how countries like America and the European Union countries and England have upgraded and stepped up, you know, its electronic security mechanisms, and South Africa is definitely lagging, you know, in that respect. So I'll be sharing some international trends with you. And in session 3, we are going to invite one of our senior IT guys just to give you a 10 or 15-minute rundown of cybercrime, cybersecurity, so that you have a better understanding of what the devices, the risk that your devices and, you know, all of that poses for you as an organization and for your clients. So that's just the objectives. Hopefully by the end of session 3, we would have ticked done next to all of our objectives. So in today's session, as I said, we are going to look a little bit at some thoughts surrounding the privacy policies. And I'm going to show you some examples in a minute. I've screenshotted many examples of privacy policies that all of a sudden have been popping up on my cell phone as and when I open applications or download applications or open up banking apps, or I go onto websites to read a news article, or I want to download music from YouTube. I'm going to show you some examples of privacy policy prompts that have now all of a sudden started appearing, and it's following the promulgation of POPI in June this year. So you need to now start looking out for these, because it will give you some ideas of what, you know, your organization will be heading towards. So the questions that Chas Everett and STBB and all companies who collect information will be answering in its privacy policy are the following. So firstly, I think we should establish at some other point, and you as an agent, you as an admin person, you as an IT consultant within the Chas Everett organization, do any of you even know whether your organization has a written privacy policy in place? So that's a question you need to ask. And if so, have a look at it. If not, then of course you know that you, and rest assured that your organization will now implement one. From STBB's perspective, just interestingly enough, we don't have a written privacy policy in place, believe it or not. We just deal with our clients' information confidentially, and I suppose that is the overriding umbrella policy that we've got in place, but it's not even a written policy. So this question is a no for STBB. We do not have a privacy policy in place quite yet. So it's not a massive problem if you don't have one in place, but it's interesting to start finding out, to start discovering. If there is one in place, is the policy applicable to branches and franchise offices? Because it's all good and well if an organization such as, say, STBB or Chas Everett, which is a large organization, has a privacy policy in place, but every office does its own thing and doesn't actually follow the, you know, the head office privacy policy. So for your organization, there would probably be a head office, a large scale privacy policy in place, which will equally apply to the branches and to the franchise offices all across South Africa. So these are the things that you will see in your policy. When was the policy drafted and or updated, if one exists? Does every office have a copy of the policy, if one exists? So once a policy is drafted and implemented within your organization, these are the things that you need to make sure or ensure is complied with. Every office must have a copy of it, a physical copy printed out in a folder. And if your privacy policy exists, has the following been included? And if it doesn't exist yet, please ensure that it is included. Thoughts on how employees' devices, so cell phones, tablets, and laptops, should be set up when remote access to the organization's database, emails, and other information is activated. Just stop here for a second. I don't know if any of you guys have actually thought about the way in which we operate in today's day and age. Very few of us sit stationary at a desk which is connected to an office server all day long every day. Most of us have a cell phone, sorry, or a tablet, and most of us who has a cell phone or a tablet and or has our work emails activated. So think of that for a second. If my password for my device, which is obviously my personal password for my personal device, is compromised, then your entire organization's data is compromised as well. So a policy which relates to and covers clients' personal information and privacy, confidentiality, must also include, a part of it must also include rules, special rules regarding devices. So how regularly are employees obliged to change their passwords? This apparently is now going to become a primary issue within STBB and other larger organizations such as Charles Everett. Because if we don't have a policy in place, then it's very difficult for us to defend or be indemnified if clients' information is compromised because we didn't change our password. The other example I want to mention here, which will also appear in your privacy policy and in our privacy policy, is not only how regularly your password must be changed, but also that you're not allowed to have the same password on any of your devices. Now, most of us have one type of password because just so many passwords to remember. For instance, my password is the same everywhere. It's the same on Google, it's the same on Samsung, it's the same at work, it's the same on my laptop. I mean, you know, it makes me very nervous to think that I'm going to have a different password for every of my devices. But that is necessary. And it's necessary for the organization to include that part of the policy within the privacy policy document. How employees delete emails that you receive on your cell phone and your device, your tablet, your cell phone, or client's personal information. If you receive an email from a client with a copy of his ID attached, that is personal information, and your policy document must clearly set out when and how that type of email must be deleted. You can't just leave it there in your inbox on your cell phone, because if your cell phone is compromised, then all of that information is compromised. What happens to clients' information stored on devices when there's a devices upgrade? Who's ever thought or considered this? Every 2 years, you and I get a new cell phone. I mean, soon South Africa is going to follow in the European trend where device upgrades will be available within every 12 months. So every year, you and I will have the opportunity to upgrade our cell phone handset. Not every 2 years as it is now. And do we actually go into our old device before activating our new upgrade? We're so bloody excited to get our new telephone that we quickly sync it. Everything gets synced. Your emails, your work contacts. So a policy needs to be implemented regarding upgrades and what you do with the information which you collected for the 12 months prior on your old cell phone. We need to think about that and how we allow the syncing of information from the old cell phone to the new cell phone. You're either going to have a Hawaii cell phone, but which is Android based, or a Samsung cell phone, which is, and so you're either going to have an Android phone, which is Microsoft driven, or you can have an Apple cell phone or an Apple device, which is obviously driven by Apple. And you need to think about the fact that Microsoft, on your Samsung, Microsoft driven Android device, can see and has access to every bit of information that comes onto your cell phone. You know, so these are the things and the thoughts that we've got to like piece together in the privacy policy, and you will see that in your own privacy policy once it's been developed and once it's implemented next year. And then who of you have actually had proper cybersecurity training? I went to a cybersecurity training session during lockdown, actually, because, you know, during lockdown we had lots of time just to sit around and listen to other people talk. I was flabbergasted, to say the least, to see and to hear how easy it is for fraudsters to gain access to my cell phone, which is password protected. Not only is it password protected, but I've got obviously my thumbprint, and I've got my little figurine that I've got to draw. I mean, I've got three security mechanisms that's impossible to get into my cell phone. but it's a very, very easy for hackers and fraudsters to gain access to cell phones especially. And that is the reason why password protection and password changes and the regularity of it and rules regarding the type of password is so incredibly important. So these are just the thoughts that, that we will be working through in developing the policies. Is it clear from the policy whether currently it's written or not, and in future when it is written, what may be done with clients' information taken off the organization's central system? I mean, is there actually rules surrounding that? Or is it just available to anybody for any purpose? If you've worked with a buyer or you've got 20 buyers in a specific area and you draw that list from your database, your internal database, I mean, are there rules surrounding what you may do with that information? That will also be in your policy. Is there a policy in place regarding canvassing, how and who, and direct marketing, how and who? I don't know. I don't think there are particular rules in place out in the marketplace. I think people just go for it. They gun it because canvassing is such a big part of your business and your daily activities. But you will need to incorporate a portion of your privacy in your policy document. Need to deal with canvassing and direct marketing. Are your employees or your IT, your admin people aware of the privacy policies in place within associated organizations? None of us operate in isolation. So you get a lot of information from Property 24, from Lightstone, CMA. There might be other property databases. Do you even know what Property 24's privacy policy looks like? I mean, if you share your seller's details with Property 24, because it's a very, very effective marketing tool, do you even know what Property 24 does with your seller's information? Do they store it here? Do they use it there? Do they ask permission? Do they ask your permission? Do they get your consent to canvass your seller? So we just need to also incorporate some form of checks and balances and rules surrounding your associated organizations or associations. And we need to look at their privacy rules as well, so that we work in tandem and in parallel. We have the same mindset in terms of our joint and shared clients' personal information. Is it clear from practice or your existing written privacy policy what your clients' rights are? I don't think our clients are told what their rights are at all anywhere. So going forward, your policy document will have to set out clear guidelines for your clients to go and check what their rights are in terms of their information. Is skills training needed to ensure employees are familiar with password protecting documents to and from clients? There will be a part in your policy going forward which will very clearly deal with whether you will be obliged to password protect PDF documents when you attach them to your emails. And if people don't know how to do that, maybe training might be necessary. Is the organization allowed to monitor employees' personal devices? Very contentious issue this, but let it not be a mystery to employees and or your management. Make a decision as an organization, or I'm sure a decision will be made regarding management's rights to track personal devices and usage of personal devices linked to the organization's database and emails. This was a talking point through lockdown. A lot of employers in America, especially, the Americans are always over the top, excessive with everything, but it's an interesting excess. During lockdown, a lot of major American employers would install software onto the laptop or the device through which the employee was working at home in order to determine how many hours that employee was actually logged on to the organization's system. Because a lot of people, I think, took advantage during lockdown and didn't actually log on, or work when they said they were working. So the big brother, sort of mindset is something that needs to start being discussed now as part of the client's right to privacy going forward. Can your organization or can Chaz Everett insist on you buying or upgrading your software, your malware software, the firewalls that picks up viruses. You know, all of us have this installed on our laptops and cell phones, but do we ever upgrade it? I don't even know if I've ever upgraded my malware system, McAfee, I think it's called, on my laptop. And I work on my laptop through STBB server at home every Saturday and Sunday. I mean, if my laptop is compromised, it will be a bad thing for STBB. You know, so can an organization, or should an organization like STBB management be in a position to insist that if you work at home and you log in remotely to your organization, that you are then obliged to upgrade your malware? It's interesting concepts, these, but all of this will have to be incorporated in your policy. Is a process in place in which employees' details should be entered every time clients' data is accessed in order to track? Or do we even know who goes onto the database and checks? I mean, within STBB, we've got massive systems with lots of details, and I can go and do a search right now and check if any of you bought or sold property with which transfer we did. Do we really want that? Don't we want to make sure that we can track who has checked whose information? So shouldn't we have, you know, a password that I need to type in if I want to go and do a search on someone's ID number on our central system? So that might be something that might be required. And quite honestly, is there a complaints process set out at the moment? STBB doesn't have a complaints process in place for our clients. I mean, you know, directors generally, or partners, conveyancers within STBB, we're the complaints committee. If our clients are unhappy about us sending copies of their IDs to the estate agent or the mortgage originator, you know, we just have to deal with it off the cuff. But going forward, we need to have set and very structured and clear processes in place that our clients can access with our policy on our website in order for them to be guided should they need to lay a complaint and where to lay that complaint. So in a nutshell, that is what a privacy policy will contain. Obviously, within these 13 main headings, there will be lots of subheadings as well. But I thought it would be very interesting for you just to start opening your mind surrounding the new way, you know, what will be expected. So now comes the fun part. Told you at the beginning, I've been screenshotting all these prompts. It's so interesting, and now I'm obsessed. Whenever I go onto a website, the first thing I expect is for a privacy prompt to pop up, and I haven't been disappointed. So don't just, you know, I think what a lot of us do is we go onto a website to read an article, and the privacy prompt pops up, and we just dismiss it because it's annoying, and we definitely don't want to accept or not accept. So we either accept just to get on with the article, or we just dismiss it. So what I've been doing is I've been actually going into the prompts. So the screenshot on the right is Microsoft, die groot Microsoft, Bill Gates? Yeah, Bill Gates is Microsoft. Sorry, blunt moment there for a moment. The big Microsoft's privacy policy, which has been embedded into my cell phone. So I didn't do an upgrade on any Microsoft software on my cell phone. It must have happened in the middle of the night without me knowing or noticing. But this privacy policy prompt came up on my, or popped up on my screen when I tried to open an Excel spreadsheet, which was attached to an STBB email. So, and it was an internal email. There was an Excel spreadsheet that was attached to an email within STBB to me, my STBB email address. And I wanted to open the Excel spreadsheet on my cell phone because, of course, I couldn't wait until tomorrow. I think I was at home and I wanted to check the stats, you know, now at home. So I clicked on the Excel spreadsheet, and obviously I've got Excel on my cell phone without me even knowing that I've got it, because your cell phone or Android phones are Microsoft enabled. So you've got Outlook, you've got Excel, you've got PowerPoint, you've got all those applications already installed. And look at what it says. Getting better together. We'd like you to share optional diagnostic and usage data about Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Office Mobile, and OneNote. Obviously, those are all the Microsoft apps embed it into your Android phone. It's how we continue to improve. None of this data includes your name, file contents, or information about apps unrelated to Office. Do you want optional data about your Office experience sent to Microsoft? Look how clever they are. They don't say what will be sent. They just ask you, you know, is it okay if we use whatever we feel we want from your cell phone? So from your WhatsApp, your entire activity on your cell phone, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, your work emails, they use any of that data without your permission. If you say accept and send optional data and you do not read the next, you don't actually click next and read through Microsoft's privacy policy. So what I did when this came up on my attempt to open an Excel spreadsheet is I clicked don't send optional data, and what did it say at the bottom here? It says and read. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. And read it. So I clicked on that, and then the next screenshot is what opens up. Microsoft respects your privacy. When you entrust your data to Office, think about that. Work data on your cell phone. You are giving it to Microsoft in America without you knowing. You remain the owner of the data. Okay, that's good and well, but they use our data. We collect required diagnostic data to keep Office secure, up to date, performing as expected. This relates to basic functioning and doesn't include your name, file content, or information. We've updated the privacy settings for those apps to let you know what data we collect. And then you can read it. I mean, it's a very long privacy policy, but I found it very, very interesting that Microsoft has never had these prompts whenever I try to open an Excel spreadsheet before June 2020. So this is Microsoft's compliance with POPI Act. Now that's very interesting. So when you start seeing these prompts from today onwards, have a look at it, because these are the types of things that your clients need to see when they interact with you. This is another one. I tried to open an article in the Mirror newspaper, which is a UK-based newspaper. And this is their policy prompt. It just pops up before your article opens up. You don't have a choice. You either have to accept or you read more options. They don't even give you an option not to accept. So if you want to read the Mirror online, you have to share your data. But at least they give you the details surrounding you sharing your data. It's very interesting. So it says, we value your privacy. We and our partners use technologies such as cookies and process personal data such as intellectual property addresses and cookie identifiers to personalize ads, these annoying ads, where people say to me, they were talking to their wives or husbands about something in the kitchen last night, and 5 minutes later, an ad pops up on their cell phone about the thing they were talking about. So people feel they're being listened to through their devices. I mean, it feels that way, doesn't it? But it's because you don't even know that anything and everything you download, you play, you watch, you search, goes to Microsoft. That's why they have all your details. They know what you like. They know what you don't like. And then I read through, I actually went more options and I read through, you know, Reach and Mirror's privacy policy, and I didn't accept because I just can't now be bothered with the Mirror or some UK newspaper association sending ads to me or phoning me. I just couldn't deal with that. Another example, I saw an ad on Facebook, and Facebook is associated, guys, without a doubt, to Microsoft and to Apple, because a lot of things that you do on your cell phone outside of Facebook is drawn into Facebook, and then you start seeing these ads. Anyway, so I got this ad. I got this ad on Facebook, and I clicked on it because it seemed too good to be true. There was a promotion on for 2 nights at the V&A Waterfront Hotel for 1,800 Rand for 2 people, including champagne and dinner, which it's, I mean, you'd pay 1,800 Rand for 5 minutes in the V&A Waterfront. So needless to say, I clicked on the ad thinking, gosh, I better book this for me, myself, and myself. And the minute I clicked on the ad, this is the screenshot that opened up on the left. Get in touch. Okay, contact us. Obviously, we want to know the contact details So that's to be expected. Reservations, nice. You can check availability online. We all want to check availability online without the need to phone. And then it says, this website uses cookies to improve your experience. We'll assume you're okay with this, but you can opt out if you wish. That means that if you check availability and you put your name and your surname in, unless you go into the opt-out, they are going to use your information and you'll start getting phone calls from Newmark Hotel Group next week. That's how marketing works. Anyway, so I read more, and Newmark Hotel's privacy policy, you can see the screenshot on the right, that's where it starts, is 31 pages long. I didn't want to screenshot the entire 31 pages, but I did read through it, and it makes absolute sense. It tells me, as a prospective visitor of the V&A Waterfront Hotel, what they will do with my name and my surname and my email address and telephone number, which is what I will have to complete under check availability or contact us. So I was very happy with that because I do want to know about promotions, and that's what they use my information for. Very interesting. Look at this one. Yesterday, I wanted to change the look of my phone. You know, the theme. So I went into themes, which is an embedded function within your settings. So you don't even have to go onto a website. You just go into your cell phone settings. You think it's private to you. So I clicked on themes, and up pops Galaxy themes, which is web-based. Okay, let's buy it naughty. And I've never seen this before. And I've changed my theme many times before. And I can't remember when last I changed, maybe 6 months ago. But I've never seen this. So here you go. It's another little prompt from Galaxy, which is obviously Samsung. So now Samsung's going to get your information. So marketing choice, receive promotions from Galaxy Store and Galaxy Themes. This is separate to your consent to receive marketing information about Samsung products and other services. For more information, see privacy policy. It's everywhere. Every single thing that we do is connected somehow, and the information that we have on our devices is connected somehow to Samsung, to Microsoft, to Apple. But even Apple, Microsoft, and Samsung are obliged to get our consent now to use our information. So if they are obliged to get our consent, then we are obliged to get our own clients' consent. The same principle. So we are consumers, here's some examples, but we are also suppliers, and our sellers and buyers, prospective sellers and buyers, rentals, in terms of rentals, your landlords and your tenants, they are our clients. So this type of thing we're seeing here in my screenshots is what your clients need to start seeing from July 2021 in your documents and your communications. Here's another one. Very interesting. So there are various forms. I don't know what I was thinking. I think I clicked on this radio station, FM 104. I think I was on the beach and I wanted to listen to this. And this came up, website, and this popped up. We need your consent. We and our partners may store and access personal information, the same information, you know, we find in all these prompts. But this is the way now, going forward, and you'll see these things more and more. Now, I also saw this and thought I'd take a screenshot. I just mentioned the example where people feel that they're being listened to and watched. So private conversations in one's own home. Sometimes the content of that private conversation that you and your wife, you and your husband, you and your children have around the kitchen table about a song, or I don't know, a car, a type of car, or a celebrity, or the next thing, Facebook prompts something to do with that content that you were just discussing. That is what is meant with cookies. So I went to go and look up what cookies mean in terms of all these privacy policies for app-based personal information being shared with Microsoft and Samsung, etc., MTN. If you use Standard Bank's app, you share your information with them. So 5tran, this was on my Facebook page. So as you go through your wall, this ad popped up in the middle of all my Facebook things. Look at this. Learn how automated data integration can help your organization improve performance. So why do you think this ad popped up on my Facebook wall? Because obviously I've been preparing like a maniac for all these POPI sessions. So I've been Googling privacy policies on my cell phone. So the hotel's privacy policy I opened on my cell phone. So the trend on my cell phone in the last month, which has been assessed by Microsoft and by Facebook, is that I'm doing a lot of research surrounding privacy, client information, confidentiality. And this ad pops up on Facebook. Learn how automated data integration can help your organization improve performance. That is how it works with data collection. So you guys need to be very aware of the way in which these large organizations do it. With us in the real estate industry, it's a little bit different, even though the content is very similar. The content of our policy will be similar to what I've screenshotted for you today. But you and I do not fully yet operate on an app or app-based. You and I operate on telephone, WhatsApp, email, and in person. So until everything is automated in our businesses, which is coming, the deeds registry will start accepting electronic registrations in the next few years. The Electronic Deeds Registry Act has already been published for comment. Very interesting to see what they're suggesting, how deeds will be registered electronically. You know, things like mandates, they can be signed electronically. You know, transfer documents at present can't be signed electronically for lodgement at the deeds office, but it's coming. All of that's coming. But until all of it's automated, you and I need to incorporate in all these different places that we communicate with. We need to incorporate all these privacy policy terms. So it's easy for a company like Microsoft because they just press a button and it's out to 7 billion people. Where you and I have to physically ensure that our emails, our WhatsApps, our mandates, our rental mandates, that all the different types of communication tools have some form of reference to POPI. Okay, so that's just an example, some examples of privacy policies.
All the policies here. Okay, let's start it.
Okay, I'm not sure who's unmuted. Everyone muted. Okay. So these are examples of standard changes which we think should now slowly start appearing in our industry documents. So I've taken the opportunity to actually type out what we think should be or could be examples of what we want to start seeing in the standard documents, the list of your standard documentation. So this is my private offer to purchase. So the offer to purchase that I use, say, in the office. If it's just someone selling a half share to an auntie or a child, then we use our own like private offer to purchase. And obviously this, I've given you this example because you've got to relate it practically to your document. So we just typed in at the top, the STBB complies with the provisions set out in the POPI, which is POPI Act of 2013, and treats clients' personal information contained in this document confidentially. For more information on STBB's privacy policy, please visit the website www.stbb.co.za. So a client is then guided with this little proviso, or this qualification, so that if he wants to see what it is I'm going to do with his agreement of sale and all the info, private, personal information in the agreement, then he can go to my website. So whereas Microsoft will have the pop-up on your cell phone, you're not going to have the pop-up because you're not app-based. This agreement is going to be emailed or it's going to be printed. So at least we then physically comply with the requirement to somewhere tell our clients where to find our policy. So this is just another example, you know, in the information sheets where they put all the information. In session 1, if you remember carefully, I made reference to the fact that we have to now explain to sellers and buyers and landlords and tenants why we are collecting the information in the information sheet. We can't just say, please complete the information sheet anymore. We've got to say to them, STBB is lawfully required to collect this information, including special personal information, in order to process the personal information for purposes of registering the transfer. See at the top, I have to tell them why I'm collecting it now. The collection, processing, usage, and storage of the personal information here under collected are in compliance with the provisions contained in the POPI Act, and further information regarding STBB's privacy policy can be found at the website. Do you see how we now qualifying what our direction is? We have to now put this into our contracts. We can't not have any prompts. This is our prompt. And then, right underneath the seller in the screenshot, you'll see that I've added a little qualification or a justification and a reference to the Financial Intelligence Center Act requirements placed on both you and us, so estate agents and conveyancing firms, as accountable institutions. And let's be honest, most of the info that you and I collect is for either compliance with FICA or compliance with Deeds Office. So we've got to put that into the information sheet. So we've got to explain to the client why we're collecting this. The following information is required in terms of STBB's obligations contained in the FICA Act and in order to identify the parties and verify the parties' identities. So little changes will ensure clients have more information regarding why, what, where, how. And those are the questions that we asked in session 1, which we know the answers to were no. Does our clients know why we're asking for marital status? No. Do we tell them? No. Do we know why we're collecting it? Not really. We're just collecting it because we were taught to collect it. That won't cut it any longer. So this is just an example of the things that we think you will start seeing in contracts. And then further down in the same information sheet, I just screenshotted another justification or another explanation. So bond account details is not required in terms of FICA. It's required for other reasons. It's required because in terms of the Deeds Registry Act, I need to cancel the bond if there's a bond registered over the property. So I need the account number to cancel it. So I need to explain this to the client because bond account details, marital status details, all of that is seen as personal information and is covered by POPI, and the client's entitled to receive an explanation like this. The following information is required in terms of STBB's obligations contained in the Deeds Registry Act, and in order to ensure that the bond cancellation registration is attended to timeously in the transaction. And so the justification can be anything. You can say, as you review your own standard documents, if you need bank statement for whatever reason, for the mortgage originator, and you collecting that, you need to say there, since this deal is subject to the application or approval of a mortgage bond, and in order for the banks to assess, the viability of the bond, the following information is required. So for each of your questions in your information sheet, you have got to give a reason to the client on the face of the document, and it's got to be very clear to the client why you're asking for that information. It's interesting. This is just another example. So I've given you a couple of examples of these disclaimers or the explanations that you could put onto your emails. You could put this at the bottom of all your documents in small print. So the following information is being requested from you for legitimate reasons explained hereafter. Minimum amount of information is being requested. With your signature, you confirm your agreement that the information you've supplied may be processed and shared, including but not limited to the conveyancers, the mortgage originators, SARS Council. That paragraph in itself actually ensures compliance with a big part of POPI, because you're telling them why you're collecting details. You're telling them that you're only collecting it for lawful reasons. So for FICA and Deeds Office, you have to. You're getting their signature, but with the client's signature, the client consents to you sharing the information, who you share it with, and you tell them where the privacy policy is kept at the website, where you will also find the process of requesting deletion of your personal information or amendment thereof. So this little paragraph, which is just an example, you can use it, you can change it, but it gives you a tactile example of the type of new clauses that you will have to start seeing in email signatures and pre-printed at the bottom of your mandates and your contracts. And these are just further justification, additional clauses. We've already said FICA, and so the type of explanation, is never ending. Tax, so when we ask for a client's income tax number, for him to complete it on the information sheet, we've got to say, we get transfer duty from SARS, and therefore we need your tax number. So these are just further examples. So our standard documents, we have to have all of that in. Our website, have to have a new folder or a tab, a new whole department in the website containing the policy and all the forms and maybe other privacy details that you want to put in there. But where else will visible changes within the real estate organizations be required? So you'll need to have POPI Act privacy policy references and possibly explanation and possibly the need to get consent from the client. Embedded as a hyperlink maybe on your email signature. So that's where you will need to see a change. Reference to POPI Act compliance on your WhatsApps. If you are communicating with your seller and your buyer on WhatsApp, and part of that communication includes possibly things like an ID number, a physical address. You ask the client quickly to confirm their marital status and they WhatsApp you. We need to start thinking about the way in which we can get reference to POPI Act compliance on your WhatsApps, because it's also seen as a part of communication and personal information is shared on WhatsApp. Maybe a hyperlink, opt-out, opt-in prompt for the client to request what you should not be doing with this information. A hyperlink means it's highlighted and underlined. It's in your email possibly, or on your website. And if you click on it, it takes you somewhere to an opt-out, opt-in. So there need to be prompts on your website, on your emails, hyperlink to the organization's privacy policy, as I said before, obtaining the client's consent. So now we're going to start looking at the consent you need when you're dealing with sellers and buyers to use the information for direct marketing in future. All standard documentation to have a reference to POPI compliance and where to find the policy. So this is the next step after we've started looking at the terms of the policy. It's interesting. Now we get to direct marketing. So I'm not sure if any of you have come up with a proper solution to the catch-22 conundrum that the POPI Act has created in the market. I mean, we are inundated with inquiries from real estate practitioners surrounding canvassing. If you get a contact list, or you buy a contact list, in other words, names and telephone numbers from CMA or Lightstone, how are you expected to deal with your canvassing of a person or persons on that contact list? I gave you section 66 wording contained in the POPI Act at session 1. It was at the end of session 1. But let's just quickly refresh our memories regarding direct marketing, which includes canvassing and it includes direct phoning, phoning people. Section 66 of POPIA determines that a public or private body, so it's you and me, because we are private bodies, we're private corporations. If we have personal details of an individual, we may not use the information to send direct electronic marketing to that person. And electronic includes telephone. So canvassing is included in the definition of electronic marketing, unless that person has given his or her consent. This is the conundrum. So if we get the contact list, how on earth are we supposed to get the client's consent to phone them if we're not allowed to phone them? First, before I answer that or give you the solution to the conundrum, let's quickly just have a look at whom you will be canvassing. So you will probably be canvassing or marketing directly to existing clients on your database. Those are the clients that have maybe dealt with your offices before. They bought a property through your offices before and you've got their details on your system from the transaction 2 years ago. let's call those clients existing clients from previous transactions. It's the first type of client that you'll market to. The second type of client is a completely new client who's never dealt with your organization before. So new clients' details normally are obtained from other property databases like CMA, Lightstone, Property 24, IRL, etc. And there's a different way that you will have to deal with existing clients on your existing database if you want to get their consent to use their information to canvas or email them news flashes or send them newsletters or keep them on your mailing list, as opposed to new clients because you don't have the info on your system. And then you also obviously need to see and decide how you're going to market per email, per telephone, per SMS, by doing drops. Doing drops is a way and a form of direct marketing and canvassing, which is not covered by the POPI Act. So you do not need to get anyone's permission to do physical drops at their homes. We know that within security estates, doing drops in the post boxes are quite popular, and you can continue to do that. That type of physical drops or drop marketing, you know, door-to-door marketing, is subject to the Consumer Protection Act, and I'm very happy to do a little session at a later stage just to refresh your memory on what you need to remember when you do physical drops. So it's email, telephone, and SMS, and that is the danger. This is the consent form that our legislature expects you and me to get signed by the client before we are allowed to use his or her information for future direct marketing purposes. It's not a very practical consent, but I think the idea with this regulated form, so this is the design attached to the Act, is that this consent can be incorporated into your current documentation so that you start getting the consent in this format from your current clients, so that you do start, you know, getting onto a consent obtaining program. I've taken the liberty of redesigning this regulated consent just ever so slightly to make it a bit more user-friendly and more and wider, because this consent only just says, give my consent to receive direct marketing of goods or services to be marketed by means of electronic communication. It's very narrow. Doesn't really tell us much. Yeah, it should give us the right to do much. So I've just redesigned that regulated consent into this format. So this is the format that you can use and play with and copy and paste into your mandate, into and to the back of your offer. You know, this is the type of format that you will start seeing. And it doesn't have to be this long. You can play around with the design, but this just, it starts off with the client's details. I, Melanie Kutsia, if I'm the seller of the deal, I will sign this at the end of the offer or at the back of the mandate. I hereby tick, give my consent that my personal information, which I completed, may be processed by the agency. So consent for processing. Give my consent that my personal information may be shared by the agency. And we give consent to sharing. Give my consent that my personal information may be stored. That is required. And give my consent that my information may be used by the agency for purposes of direct marketing of future property services and or to remain on the mailing list for articles, news flashes to be sent, and I agree to receiving any marketing material telephonically, by email, or WhatsApp. So it's not that difficult to get your head around the new type of consent that you have to incorporate into your standard documentation. Because we don't just need our clients' consent to use their number for phoning in future. We also need them to consent to us loading this information onto our system. So processing, sharing, storing, using it. There, we've got all four. Bam, in one. Okay. So this is the format of the consent that you need to incorporate into your documentation. But how do you get this consent signed if you're canvassing? So you need to start thinking about a way in which you get this consent, this one on your screen, sent to the clients in your existing client database. So you may want to do like emails. You know, if you want to ensure that in the next 9 months you have a database that you're allowed to start using July 2021 going forward, you need to now start getting those existing clients that you worked with 2 years ago or 5 years ago. You need to start getting their consent. So you slowly have to start engaging with your existing database, and you need to send them this form. So this is how you will ensure compliance with the POPI Act in terms of your existing client base that you have already on your system. For clients that you have never dealt with before, usually you'll phone them. That is, in our experience, how canvassing is done. It's normally telephonically if you're phoning from a contact list that you just purchased from CMA. I've even gone as far as to give you a telephone script if you're making direct marketing phone calls to clients that are not on your database. So this is the canvassing script that I think you should start thinking about and you should start looking at, and this will also be incorporated in a policy somewhere, so that the canvassers that you appoint have direction on what they should be saying, so that that phone call is in compliance with the POPI Act. I think everyone must think, gosh, this is taking it a bit too far. What we are trying to avoid is a situation where consumers who get these phone calls from agents canvassing, and clients get annoyed and they ask you to remove their details and you don't. We want to avoid reputational damage that could be suffered if many of these clients complain about Chas Everett, about STBB at the information regulator, which has been established. Now there's somewhere that they can complain, and there's going to be blacklisting lists of service suppliers who collect data and don't get permission or use it without consent. Okay, so let's just go through the direct marketing canvassing script. It's an example, gives you an idea. So now I'm the canvasser, and I'm incentivized. So I've got 50 people to phone for my principal agent who's doing viewings. I sit in the office, I sit in the boardroom, and the next person on my list is Mr. Nell. So Mr. Nell owns a flat in Greenpoint, and he is on my list to canvass. So whatever the other part of the script is, you need to add this part now. So the phone will ring and Mr. Nell will answer. And I'll go, hello, Mr. Nell. It's Melanie Kutse speaking. I'm phoning you from Jarvis Fourways and want to offer you a free valuation. Are you interested? Either he's going to say, yes, thank you. That sounds great. In which case, your foot is in the door. Or he's going to say, no, thank you. I'm not selling my property. If he says no, thank you, ask him the next question. Okay, thank you. We often send out area-specific property-related information and want to know whether you wish to receive any of our newsletters. If he says yes, thank you, your foot is in the door. If he says no, thank you, the last question you should ask at least, okay, would you like us to remove your details from our contact database? Or shall we keep it and make contact with you in, say, 6 months or a year? Best case scenario, he says, yes, that actually sounds very nice. Please do send me your newsletters, but don't phone me. Just send me your newsletters. Or alternatively, worst case scenario is if he says, no, thank you, please remove my details. In a nutshell, that conversation is POPI Act compliant, except if Mr. Nell requests me to remove his details from the Chas Everett database. That is my last step in order to comply with the POPI Act. So, must be part of the policy. Do we just render his details inactive, but we keep it, or do we delete it? If we got his details from CMA, do we ask CMA to delete it as well, or do we ask CMA to render his details inactive? So we have to put some thought into the chain of information. And if Mr. Null is a nice guy and you catch him at the right time and he says yes during this conversation, you will probably meet with him because you're going to do a valuation, or you do a desktop valuation. When you send it to him, you also send him this consent. You ask him to sign it. That is how you will get his consent. If he says no, that's it. You don't need to get anything in writing or anything signed. He's just said no, but you've got to follow through with his request to remove his details. And so you might want to expand that last question. You know, you can make it as wide as you want. Do you want to receive newsletters but not SMSs? You know, whatever it is. I don't know what type of canvassing you do. You will know what type of canvassing you want to do and what you use your client's information for.
Mel, can I just jump in here and say something quickly? I think the most important thing to remember, especially for a big company like Chaz Everett, is quite often there is more than one database. So what I mean by that is Chaz Everett International will have a database for, let's say, Chaz Everett Randburg with all their clients, and Mr. Null might be on that specific database. But within that, there'll be an agent. I see Miranda's on here today. Miranda's no doubt got her own database, which she has built up over many, many years. And Mr. Null will be on that database as well. And I think that's what is important for the agents and the principals to remember, is that if Mr. Null says, no, I want to be off that database, there needs to be a way that all those databases talk to each other and that is removed off the Chaz Everett Randburg database. And whether that information is held in one place or three places or five places, that's very important, because if he says no to all those questions you've just asked him, and he says, please remove me off your database, but then head office phones him this week and asks him if they can market him. Next week, Miranda phones him and says, can I market you? There are going to be issues. And I think that is a very important point that needs to be made.
Very good point, Richard. Thanks. That question comes up a lot. You know, today is quite a hefty, substantial presentation. So I can imagine that by now you guys must be either very exhausted or maybe losing a bit of interest. So you know, these are just concepts that we are sharing with you. We are trying. Well, what I'm trying to do is open your minds to these things that are happening around us that we're not even aware of, that we're unaware of, because these are the types of things that us as attorneys are working on for our clients, our real estate partners. I'm doing STBB's policy. You know, I'm opening my mind to these types of things so that we can have a nice workable policy in place that makes our clients feel confident in our systems and in their confidentiality of their information. And that will lead, I think, directly and indirectly to a great degree of trust. You know, it carries integrity to have a proper privacy policy in place where your client feels, in today's day and age, with you being watched by the man on the moon through your cell phone screen whilst you're sleeping. I mean, we all feel that that's the way the world is going. But when we deal with property and all the amounts of money and the personal and intimate information we ask of them, we do need to now get onto that treadmill. So you're right, Richard, that structure within many of the real estate organizations, the large ones, it is something that needs attention. One needs to discuss it and find a workable way to ensure that Mr. Null's details is deleted or rendered inactive across the board. So it will probably take quite a while for all of us to get there, but we need to start heading that way. You're 100% right. The same principle applies within STBB. You know, we have one database, but we also have physical databases. And it is a challenge. We find it's a challenge generally in business, that some of us work on a diary, some of us have it on our cell phones, some of us have it on our laptops, and it might not always be that integrated. Okay, now, this is interesting and we're nearly done, I promise. So what is STBB doing? So we are in the same position as Chaz Everett and all the other real estate. So I'm emphasizing, because it looks like a hell of a lot is going to change and that you have a lot of requirements and obligations. But so do we. Our biggest worry within STBB organization isn't really, isn't really our database security, because we have very strong firewalls in place that we constantly upgrade every second day. So it's not that easy for a fraudster to hack STBB system. What is easy that we've seen is for fraudsters to intercept emails. And you and I both know how many emails we send and receive a day. So clients of STBB are most at risk of having their emails intercepted and being scammed when paying large deposits and large amounts of cash to STBB or any other attorney for that matter. All attorneys are in the same boat here, and real estate agents. And secondly, they are also at high risk of having their identities cloned, as we request and receive copies of IDs, passport, bank details, bank accounts, tax numbers, utilities, as unprotected PDF attachments on emails. So these two aspects I'm highlighting now. It's not the only aspects of the privacy policy we're working on for STBB, obviously not, but this is where our security is at risk, our client security. How are we dealing with this? Well, we've tried everything. We phone clients and give them our bank details so that if their email is intercepted and it's changed, they pick it up. As much as we phone them, hackers still intercept the emails and still manage to get clients to pay them. It's unbelievable. No matter what we do, the hackers are just one step ahead of us. But not anymore. We are slowly moving away from email communications. It can't happen as fast as we would like to. I mean, I'd like STBB to have a system like Microsoft, where you just press a button and everything is, is electronic, so that we don't, and that it's all app-based. Nothing is email-based. But we are slowly moving away from email communications, and we are also slowly moving towards clients completing documents on their devices and having it integrated with our software, which will do away with the emailing a document, the client printing it, completing it, scanning it in, and emailing it back to STBB. I mean, there is just so much risk in those emails to and fro. And how are we doing it? How are we moving away from emails and moving towards electronic devices and completion of electronic documents on devices instead of printing it, signing it, emailing it? This is the screenshot in the middle of the screen of our current STBB Direct app homepage, the interface homepage. If you haven't downloaded this app yet, it's free of charge in the Google Play Store and on the Apple Play Store. Do yourself a favor and download it. Play a little bit with, and this app currently looks the same as most other attorneys' apps. But we are about to enhance our STBB Direct app for our sellers and our buyers. We thought long and hard, how can we get away from emails? How can we get away from emails? How can we get away from emails which can be hacked, and intercepted, and deposits paid to fraudsters and money's gone? Sellers and buyers, once our app is upgraded, which should happen in the next 10 days, it's that exciting, it's around the corner. Our software system, where we put the client's details in, is going to be integrated with our app, which means we are going to communicate with the sellers and the buyers, not by printing things out or attaching it to an email on an app physically at the desk to the Gmail account, and then it's intercepted. We are going to send communications from our software, which is our conveyancing software, to the client via our app. So we are moving towards an app-based business. It's so exciting because when clients, sellers and buyers need to send us copies of their IDs and the FICA and the rest of the documents, the proof of payment and proof of banking details, we want them to take a picture on their cell phones and upload that picture into their folder on the app. So we are moving towards the app and away from emails, which are dangerous. So that's very exciting for us. So this interface will change. It's a function that we are going to implement shortly when we do the upgrade and we go live for sellers and buyers. So not yet for the agents, because obviously it's the sellers and the buyers that send the PDFs and receive the PDFs with all that type of information. So for the agents, you guys and us will still communicate the same way. There's little risk in the offer being sent, but eventually our whole plan and dream is to completely integrate our app with your software so that you can just press a button at your desk and the whole offer comes through. It's on the folder and we then integrate. So that's the way we're going. But that's what STBB is doing right now, which I think is very, very exciting. So this is pretty much the end of session 2, but I do want you to do a little bit of homework for session 3, as you did at the end of session 1 for today's session. Start looking out for these pop-up prompts on the apps, you know, Facebook, and, you know, whenever you open something on your cell phone or your tablet, there will be these prompts that I've screenshotted and shared with you earlier on companies' privacy policies. And click on it and read a little bit through other companies' privacy policies. It's interesting, and it will just enhance your insight. It will start making you feel very comfortable with a privacy policy. So try and read as many as possible before the next session. And in fact, at the beginning of session 3, I'm going to run a little competition. The person who can legitimately confirm the highest number of privacy policies that they've read through will go into a draw for a nice little prize by the end of our next session. But then, of course, I will check that you have read that policy. Make a summary of the areas in your own daily business life which you can identify now, knowing a bit more about this danger and getting work emails at home and Microsoft probably sitting there somewhere on the moon looking at all the work emails you're getting at home at night. So just start thinking about the areas in your life where you can identify the possibility of exposing your clients' private and personal information. Maybe your organization decides to stop WhatsApp communication with sellers and buyers unless it's communication which do not contain personal information, for instance. So start thinking about what you do every day and then start making a little summary just so that you start identifying the risks as you go along now. And then download the app. I mean, there's no obligations, you know, it's just for you to have a look at the STBB Direct app, because once the upgrade comes through, then you'll be able to see how and even a law firm that must work with 10,000 million trillion files, physical pieces of paper, is slowly moving towards more of an app-based communication system. It's more secure, and that I think will be very nice homework for you guys for our next session. So I think that's enough, even for me now. I'm out of breath. I need to take a little sip of my coffee. I see there are some questions, Richard. If you know, if you'd like to maybe check if there are questions, I'm very happy to take some, you know, some questions.
I see we've got a question from Miranda about Truecaller. Obviously, when somebody phones you from Truecaller, it gives you their identity or the name of the company or institution that's phoning you. And I think that Miranda, and I'll just jump in here for Mel, she can have another sip of her coffee. Miranda, the difference there would be that that person is contacting you. You're not canvassing them. So getting to know who institution is. So say, for instance, I phone you off the STBB landline and I try and phone you, Truecaller will bring it up as STBB. And that's perfectly permissible.
Absolutely. I mean, Truecaller is the best thing that's ever been invented in the history of the world. Of course, after Cape Town's fantastic stuff and your blank wine. Truecaller, I mean, obviously, and I think not only but obviously I can only just talk from my own experience, but the day I discovered Truecaller was like my saving grace, because if you keep updating the Truecaller app, and I mean, it's quite ironic because the Truecaller app obviously is also in for Microsoft to see who you block and who you don't block. I mean, it's all connected. But anyway, it's nice to know when the screen turns red that it's a marketing call, because it's an actual automated message. So I then block that number. And that has made my life a lot easier. You know, Sunlum, PPS, Alan Gray, even Discovery is phoning people off the hook, who's also making a lot of unsolicited marketing phone calls. And at some other point in our lives, I think all of us, either we were a member of Health and Racket Club or we were a member of this Virgin Active. I mean, at some point in our lives, they are struggling. So they are phoning. I mean, Virgin Active phoned me 7 times on Friday morning before 12 o'clock. They started at 7 o'clock, and by 12 o'clock, when I was finished with my, I blocked the number. It's so Truecaller at least helps a little bit in as far as you phoning the client unsolicited. Because your name and number will come up, and if the client blocks you and the call doesn't go through, then of course you can't say that you've spoken to the client and he's given you permission to use his number going forward.
Cool. Thank you, Mel. Thanks for hosting the session. I think your knowledge and in-depth knowledge of the subject is something that everybody appreciates. I think from my side, just to summarize, and I think the few talks that I have done on POPI, there's 2 things we need to differentiate behind, and that's from a head office perspective. I think Barry, those guys, they're interested in how they store the data and the nitty gritty of the act, and probably from a principal perspective, for those of you that are principals on the chat. But when it comes down to agent level, the topic that you covered today about canvassing is the only question they have every single time. That's the question. And the question is simple. It is, can I canvass, yes or no? And the short answer is, yes, you can canvass. Yes, you can canvass, but how you do it and the way you do it is going to have to change slightly. I fear that when it comes to, for those of us that were around in 2007, if we remember, the National Credit Act came into being, and I remember there was a massive uproar in the industry, and everybody's like, nobody will ever get a bond ever again. And look where we are 13 years down the line. And I think I fear that with POPI, that the thought going around with the agents is like, oh, I'm not allowed to canvass at all anymore. And I think that's something as the principal and head office, we need to allay those fears and teach the guys that, yes, you are allowed to canvass. The way that you do it is going to have to change, and you're going to have to be a lot more deliberate in the way that you do it, but it is definitely allowed. And I think that's probably the biggest takeaway that everybody should take from today. Any last questions, guys? I don't think so. I think the next session is on the 17th of October. No, September. 17th of September. And we look forward to hosting everyone then. Anastasia, anything you want to say? I see Anastasia's also online.
Hi. As always, Mel, thank you. You just have a way with your words, as Richard said right in the beginning. There cannot be anything more boring than POPI. But you make us excited to deal with apps and to be modern and sophisticated going forward with the way that we do business. Thanks, guys. And thank you, Chaz. Love seeing you all. Bye.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Bye, everybody. See you in 2 weeks. Bye.
Dankie, Melanie.